And I think mentoring is a particularly important subject. My definition of the mentor is the guide by the side and not the sage on the stage. I think that all young people should be searching for someone among their teachers or friends, people they work with in clubs outside of school perhaps. Sometimes we find mentorships within families, but more often these are what are referred to as the significant other outside the family. And the mentor is the person who encourages a young person, who listens, who is always there, who becomes the confidant, the person that you can always share things with. The guide by the side, not the sage on the stage. And I've put that into print several times. But I've never been able to find out where it originated, but I continue to feel that a mentor is a guide by the side, not a sage on the stage. The mentor is the person who helps somebody, not telling somebody. I thought that the word mentoree was a little bit too much, and I invented the word mentee. And I have found that most writing has picked that up. And there was no Library of Congress word for mentorships when I started thinking about it and writing about it. And now the Library of Congress has a whole category of mentorships. I think probably Paul Torrance had a lot to do with my strong impression of mentors, because Paul has been a mentor to many, many people, including Dr. Murdoch here. Where this person has this potential, this person has this potential, and you put them together and you have more potential than either had individually. Well, now looking at some of these strategies, the first one is the attitude of positiveness, and of course by that I'm saying what I guess is one of my everyday bits of involvement, that optimism breeds optimism and pessimism breeds pessimism. And I see no reason for concentrating on the pessimism when we can be optimistic about something.
And I'd come in complaining and crying and miserable, and she'd say, okay, what's good about it? What? What do you mean, what's good about it? And she'd say, well, think about it. What is good about it? And I had to sit there until I thought up 3 things that were good about it. And what that did was get me in a different mindset.
It was an important energy to feel, and at the center during the time that I was there, is that she was the only woman in leadership there. And that was an important component, because she got it. Yeah. Without any intention besides me being at my best. Okay. What if going to experiencing, I won't say see, experiencing the fullness of the Ruth, if I was transformed in some way, if I was shifted in some way, if the energy shifted in some way, if a portal opened that I didn't see, if I felt more comfortable, confident, assured, curious, strong.
She was fully present when we were there. She was the epitome of generative listening.
I became a mathematics engineering officer on the Mark I computer at Harvard University. And as such, I was working with Howard Aiken, who was the inventor of the first large-scale calculating machine. And my mentor there, and this is a part of this real understanding of the whole aspect of mentorship, my mentor there was Grace Hopper. She was my teacher, my roommate.
So, but that was just Ruth, you know. You could depend on her. You could depend on her. If Ruth said she was going to do something, it was done. Right? And it was just this, and maybe partly, you know, I think, you know, her mathematical training, her time in the Navy, you know, really, if that wasn't the person that she was before she went into the Navy, her mathematical training, you know, that helped her to become that. But I think that she just grew up that way. She's just one of those people that just was just solid. She would push back on stuff when it wasn't right. Principled. Highly, highly principled. So I guess to probably sum it up would be, you know, the master teacher, highly principled, and really could be a really good friend. Students were absolutely her priority. Absolutely her priority, yeah. By her accessibility, by her temperament, students were her priority. That's why she was there.
But the important thing in mentoring is to help the mentee to develop that value system, whatever it may be. So I would urge students to ask questions, and particularly to ask why, to understand more about whatever it is they're dealing with, to find a teacher, someone who will be a mentor to them, and most of all, to keep an open mind, to be looking always for alternatives, to be looking for alternate ways that we might do something, alternate ways that we might understand something.
About trying to be non-judgmental. And her tell was, as she was like really holding on to it, if she was being a skeptic about something, that her nose would scrunch up, she'd tilt her head to the right, her palms would be facing out, and there's a slight gritting of her teeth, kind of like, oh, wow. But it just happened for a moment, and she'd be back into the non-judgmental part. It was kind of interesting to see that she really did work at the deferred judgment part.
I met Ruth because she was teaching creative studies. The moment that was the trigger moment in terms of how she helped to open a gate that I didn't know existed was at the beginning of each intro class, we would do a warm-up, and someone that I lived with, like one of the suite mates that I had in Buffalo, was a dance person, and I told her about our warm-ups, and she said, we do warm-ups too, and then did a warm-up with us in the dorm. And I remember mentioning that to Ruth at a subsequent class, and she said, well, why don't you lead it? At which point my jaw dropped, my heart pounded. I said, what, me? And she said, yeah, go ahead, lead it. and that was stepping over the threshold. And that was what she presented for me, was that open, yes, why don't you? And that was Ruth.
A person who's a cheerleader, that may mean different things to different people, but a person who's a cheerleader. A person who is a critic. You have to be able to have the openness, but you also have to be able to have the critical aspect at the same time. Challenges or encourages people to do their best, be honest, have intellectual sharpness, have certain job skills and competence on the job to be appreciated by the mentee, have social skills, have emotional stability or maturity, have the capacity to nurture. To me, that's perhaps number one, the capacity to nurture. Be committed, be motivated, be willing to share knowledge. You know, this whole business of, I know it, but boy, I'm not going to give it away. So the mentor has to be willing to share the knowledge as well as the time and the energy to go into this relationship. A willingness and capability of giving feedback, both positive and negative. A genuine interest in being a mentor. It just does not work to appoint somebody and say, you are the mentor. It just does not work.
If I thought of an overall theme for Ruth, it's kindness. It's just kindness, okay? All the way through. And she was always kind to me, and we've always had great relationships and great interactions. When you talk about remembering a person, we focus on only the things that are unique about that person, when in fact, most of what was unique about Ruth was the people that she influenced. So the influence she had on you with your interactions, that's Ruth. Okay? And you could probably sit down and list a whole bunch of things that you have a different way of doing things now because you knew Ruth.
Her influence on me was significant. She was the model of a listener. She was so present when you were talking to her. Ruth was not the kind of person that would tell you what to do, but she would ask the most pertinent questions that helped you find out what it was that you should be doing going forward. It was significant.
The process that is taught in what we call creative problem solving, Buffalo is a center of creative education, and this is a process for solving any type of a problem, whether it be a personal problem, a mathematical problem, a technical problem of whatever kind. It's an approach in which you look at alternatives. You alternate between open thinking and critical thinking, open thinking and judgmental thinking. And the process is based on the technique of brainstorming. Many people still use brainstorming in any kind of a situation to think of ideas. So this process for creative problem solving does just that. It forces you to look for alternatives. And I think that's what I was missing in my love of mathematics that I then found in the creative problem solving process.
And it also relates to the solution of problems.
It certainly does. It
You like
encourages
solving
you.
problems.
That's right. I like solving problems, and this took me beyond then mathematical problems.
I think in many cases, she was really an emphasis behind how they formulated the process, the diverging, the converging, that sort of stuff. I think she was also the person that just really, she put a point on it, and she tidied it up, and she made it accessible.
I had that experience with her, and I think what stunned me the most is her ability to create a rapport. Because of what I just mentioned, her office was open, and it was so shocking that a professor wanted to have a rapport with a student. And that totally opened up my world to learning. I learned through Ruth, I learned how to learn. I was always a very good student, so to speak, but I wasn't learning, I was memorizing and regurgitating. I had no appetite for education. I did not want to go past high school. My academics were fine, but it just meant nothing to me. And here my world opens up by a person who's showing me, by researching and searching my passions, how to learn. What a gift. So that was one of her finest gifts to me. She hooked me into the understanding of knowing that when you gather facts, obviously from different points of view, the divergent part of it, that this is where she was balancing set out too. It wasn't just the brainstorming and the divergence. You gathered the facts, you really, really, really diverged the criteria, and then you had a very fruitful way to implement, to walk toward the solution of the problem. And so that part was very, very important to me as well. So that's the balance.
So she had a lot of expertise in creative problem solving, even though she came from mathematics? Or?
She had a beautiful way of merging it. I think, you know how she took the creativity equals the function of knowledge, imagination, and evaluation. She related it back to math, and the first time I saw it, I go, what the heck is she talking about? You know, and then of course you get a little older and wiser, and you thought, this is profoundly brilliant. Because you have to have the knowledge piece. Obviously, it's right there. Although discerning the knowledge. Then letting your imagination fly free. But then the evaluation part should be diverged as well, so that you know you have a comprehensive evaluation before you start wandering off and implementing the challenge and solution to the challenge. So what a gift, huh?
And that has been my philosophy throughout my study of creative problem solving, is to help people discover who they are and to use their capabilities to the maximum in their way. And that's what we succeeded in doing in our coursework, in having people who knew they were creative but couldn't talk to anybody about it, finally to understand these other people who felt they weren't creative and have an interchange of ideas finally. So I think that's been one of the greatest applications of our program, is to have people understand who they are and why they are, and understand who other people are and why they are, and to be able to communicate it. Communication, I think, is just tremendously important. And this takes me back to communication. If you are interested in having a mentor, tell the person or persons, and it isn't just one person. We're very often mentored by more than one person at a time for different purposes. I had the open door policy, and students knew that they could come in and talk. I was never too busy. It might need an extra hour there, but I was never too busy to listen to a tale of woe or to share a happy experience with people. One of our master's graduates married another one of our, well, they were married just about the time that they were getting their degrees. And I was invited to be a member of the wedding tradition, and I read one of the lessons because they had learned that they could enjoy the congeniality of coming in and sharing that with me when they were students.
Her door was always open. She had a bowl of peanuts. And so you could come in and just eat peanuts, and you wouldn't throw the shells on the floor, but you'd get the shells, and she bought bags of peanuts for folks to come in. Whatever she was doing, she would stop, and she would give you her full attention.
When you were in her presence, when you're in her office, and she was listening, she was present 100% in that conversation, and that stands out in my mind for Ruth.
And it was like, it was not reprehensible or anything. It was just like, oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, she didn't chastise.
No, she never did. She never did.
No.
And she could laugh.
Unequivocal clarity.
Unequivocal clarity.
Unequivocal clarity. That's gonna be my phrase for the.
I felt that I had learned something in creative problem solving in the process that was just a natural process, but it encouraged me to look at things very differently from what I had been doing. As I've said, I was very left brain, having been a mathematician, but it was my music that fortunately kept me from being a lost soul, because my violin was my best friend. And that allowed me to release, in a way, the other part of me that didn't want to follow the straight and narrow path. And I'm afraid that a lot of our faculty were too left-brained to really understand what I saw in creative studies, but fortunately, they came around.
She was an amazing woman. She inspired so many people, so many students, and I think some adults as well. She is also very interesting from the point of view that when people learned she was a math teacher, and she went into creativity, I said, yeah, I was supposed to teach math and chemistry, and I'm in creativity. There's something there that she showed, that you don't have to be where you were. You can do something that excites you. And creativity excited her so much. She loved it.
Me too. I remember when Ruth retired, she didn't say she was retiring. She said she was refiring, going off in a new direction.
First of all, having the capability of doing something with something that was very new and enjoying every minute of it. We were bringing about a whole new concept of thought, which I have been appreciating the rest of my life. So my suggestion is build on your strengths, build on your talents, and develop them as thoroughly as you possibly can. To build on any particular interest that they have, to become especially involved in it, to study it, to become good at it, because they never know when it's going to be opportune for them to use those capabilities.
A woman who literally walked the walk with a military cadence and talked the talk with beautiful honesty. And with that, she was always inviting people to join her in the creative education exploration, encouraging them to see the potential, first of all, of themselves, their potential, their passions, so that they could decide what their vocations would be and carry that forward. So that was probably the most beautiful side effect of knowing Ruth and seeing her in action facilitating.
Bring it to the grassroots. It was Ruth that just, Sid democratized it, Ruth solidified it. Yeah, so looking for a line there. Oh, the academic curriculum, that was Ruth. All Ruth. I mean, Ruth was a curriculum builder, but she really put that curriculum together. She tightened it up. And she was able to create the programmed instruction on that. The other thing that too is that when they did the Creative Studies project, Ruth was a mathematician that decoded all of those studies again and again and again and again and again. And I think what they did was they just threw everything they possibly could at the students and said, well, what's gonna stick?
I would say that in that kind of a contribution, she made that. I think she also humanized the whole field. I mean, for example, in that analysis course was basically teaching about how people really think.
Yes, I did a lot of tutoring when I was in high school. I entered high school at age 12. I graduated at age 16. And my greatest love was doing math problems and sharing them with other kids who were having trouble. And my teacher, the woman who was probably my mentor, and I had mentors all the way through school, and this is one of the things I would certainly recommend to kids in school of whatever age, is to find somebody who's interested in them. My math teacher was interested in me because I enjoyed math. And I usually had opportunities after school in her room. I would just kind of gravitate toward her room after school, and she was patient and would give me something to do, either helping her make up grades or working on some of the problems to see what might be more interesting to the kids than maybe some of those that she had written otherwise, and helping other students.
What I remember most is Ruth's style, just so laid back, so calm, so peaceful, and so funny. She said that puns were the highest form of humor because you had to know two different subjects and be able to put them together in a creative way that made them funny. So she thought that was a very high form of humor.
My eyes went, oh. And I still carry that in terms of, so what is it that Ruth did? And what did she do for me was open doors or reveal gateways and then help them to open. It enabled me to have the courage and confidence to walk through, right? And I thought, okay. And so that to me is what Ruth did. And that's what it is that I do in day-to-day life.
But that's one of the contributions that I felt that I had made to the program. And in getting the program going, I was feeling my way just like everybody else. And it was in that time that I really felt that Sid Parnes was my mentor, because he had attended the first institute in 1955. And every institute since, he had been the director. So he was really showing me the pathway. And I was bringing in things that impressed me as a person who had just not had any of these experiences before, except possibly through my music. And this is something that Paul Torrance pointed out to me not too long ago. When Paul was ready to retire, I asked him what he was going to continue to do. I knew that he could never stop writing and doing investigation. So I said, Paul, what's your emphasis going to be when you retire? And he said, mentoring. We have had lots of discussions about that. And we talked about the fact that mentoring is a symbiotic relationship, that both members of the relationship gain from this relationship. And one of these articles in the journal that I wrote talked about mentoring as a symbiotic relationship.
Since 1970, my mentor was there for me, teaching me things that I didn't even know she was teaching me along the way.
I decided to share my interest in mentoring. It had not been a part of the college, particularly in creative studies. And I just felt that mentoring and networking were two very creative approaches to leadership. And I've done many sessions on mentoring as a creative approach to leadership. And I'm still writing on it. So I think I've been mentored all my life, and I just want everybody to feel the experience of mentorship, either in giving or accepting, because it is a symbiotic relationship in which the mentor, to my feelings, gains maybe more than the mentee. And by the way, I guess I invented the word mentee, because up to the point that I was doing some writing on this, and as I say, there was no category in the Library of Congress, some writing would talk about the mentoree. Well, that seemed too complicated to me. So I decided to use the word mentee. Again, I think it's a very personal thing involving those people, and that's another reason why it's so important to establish the relationship so very carefully. But it's one of the biggest risks is this whole business of the mentee passing the mentor, and it's again one of the reasons why we hope that mentor will be a nurturing person who will be able to take that.
Her courage and her willingness to not only accept change, but take change on willingly. So think of a person who spent her undergraduate career, her graduate career on the master's level, her first work during the war, all mathematics. She came back from the war, pursued her doctorate in education, but went right into the instruction of mathematics. And taught mathematics for like 20 years. And all of a sudden she's given this opportunity. She was asked to sort of walk away from her field of study, walk away from 20-year career as a mathematics instructor, to take on this new challenge in this emerging, not yet quite proven field of creativity. Just imagine the courage that it took, and the willingness to jump into a sea of change. And I think that that's a model to be emulated. That's when we're creativity is about change, and for us to, it's good that we have Ruth as a model of what positive can come out of that.
So I'm asking all the students of whatever age to use their imaginations and go beyond the obvious way of looking at something.
She provided a platform and lots of examples to accept others' points of view and have a brilliant discussion about it. So you could say it, she didn't necessarily agree with it, but she would, in her own way, her own very constructive and creative way, ask questions to pull it out, to get to those little gems, the levels of discernment that she would apply. And it wasn't until I became a teacher that she said, oh my God, I didn't even know she was teaching me those things. Now I see it. Look what she did. And it kept on unfolding, all the gifts, year after year after year.
It's because I realized that I had been mentored all of my life, and that one of the reasons I wanted to get away from the machine at Harvard was that I wanted to continue with my life as a teacher and a mentor. I have the feeling that all teachers are potential mentors. They are not always, because everybody is not designed to be a mentor. But I fortunately had found lots and lots of mentors in my life, both men and women. And I just decided I wanted to share that with the world. And that's why I deliberately made a study of it. Well, I feel that mentoring is going to help people to realize their creative potential in a way that those people might have been lost by the wayside before.
I think it's important to recognize that as we go through life, one thing leads on from another, but you can't guess what it's going to be. Like her going from a musician to a mathematician to a mentor in creative studies. Who would guess all of that? And I think if we look back on our lives, we can look sometimes the things that we thought were bad turned out to be the best things that could have ever happened to us. That she ended up very different than how she started, and people should never give up, because you don't know what's gonna happen. And I think she was happy with her life. She wasn't always happy with the guy she was working with, but she was happy with what she accomplished.
Because I cannot not say this. The essence of Ruth is what's in World Creativity and Innovation Day. Open the door, enable people to walk through. It's like, and that's Ruth. That is so totally Ruth.
I think that she is a person who made available a perspective on facilitation, on creativity, on mentoring, on teaching that's transformed some people. I know she changed you. I know she changed me.
Navigate to.
The image is Ruth, very simply,
And the image, navigate, and the image is Ruth, very simply, at the end of the hall with her door open.
Yep, end of the hall.
End of the hall. Doors
End of the
open.
hall, door always open.
Doors open.